Hey there, it's Max. This is the first video on Heap vulnerability classes. In this section, we're going to talk about buffer overflows briefly. We're then going to talk about use after free vulnerabilities and double frees more in depth. The use after free and double free sections each have their own exercises as well, so you get to practice and understand these vulnerability classes deeper. So let's go into it. I'm going to turn off my camera for a second so you can see this a little bit better. Here, we have a buffer overflow, but instead of being on the stack, it's on the heap. For this vulnerability, we have a set size buffer, and we're going to overflow that buffer or write outside the bounds of it. And using this, we can corrupt useful information. For instance, this prev size, the size, fd, and bk are really useful primitives. If we can extend the size of a chunk, then the next time we allocate that chunk, then it may be think it's larger than it actually is and give us a much better overflow primitive. Now, there's not much to say on that except that we're going outside the ranges of a buffer. And this vulnerability is everywhere. It's one of the key principles of binary exploitation and memory corruption. So it's kind of assumed you guys know how this works fairly well at this point. We'll be exploiting it more in the future though, so don't worry. Now, the use after free is the first heap-specific vulnerability we're going to talk about, and the focus of this video. The idea behind a use after free is you have a reference to a pointer, even though it's been given back to the allocator. Say that again. You have a reference to a pointer, even though you freed it, given it back to the allocator. Now, it's going to be recycled and reused for something else, but now you have a direct reference to it still, even though the allocator thinks that you don't. That's why it's called a use after free. It's one of the only times that something's actually been named correctly. Just to really drive home in the impact, I think that's the second most common vulnerability reported as ZDI in 2019. We can turn off the camera for a second. Yeah, in 2019. ZDI, the Zero Day Initiative, did a blog post where they talked about the various vulnerability submissions they had, and the use after free is one of the most common ones because of how powerful of a primitive it can give you. So I think there's a really good analogy that takes us home. Now, I want you to close your eyes. I know it's weird. But give me a second. Close your eyes. I want you to imagine that you're in a hotel. And when you get to that hotel, you go to the manager. And the manager gives you a hotel room. And for that, they give you a room key. You enjoy your time, you have a great time at DEF CON or wherever you're at, but you go to checkout. But you're naughty, you're a hacker. You try to break the system. Instead of giving your hotel room back, when you check out, you keep your key to that hotel room. So you wait a day, and now you can cause all sorts of havoc. First, you can access a free room. So you can take all of the drinks and snacks for free, and the hotel staff isn't going to know who took it. Because at that point, it's not your room anymore. But second, probably most importantly, you can access another person's room. So if they have their laptop and other things stored in there and they're not there and you go in there, you now have access to all that information that you shouldn't have access to. So you can look at their passport, you can steal their computer, you can toss the room, steal the drinks, you do whatever you want. All right, open your eyes now. Hope you closed them. So this hotel analogy is really good for this. And if we rethink about this issue, but in terms of memory, I think it's really helpful. So the hotel is like the memory itself. It's all of the space in the hotel. The memory allocator is like the manager. It's one that chooses what room everyone gets and makes sure it's legit. A piece of memory is the hotel room. An individual room is a piece of memory, to be clear. And a pointer is the room key. So in the first scenario, when we have access to a free room, now we can go outside a sec. We have access to a free room, that's a problem. Because I can access the FD and the BK of a pointer, of a particular chunk. I can corrupt information in the linked list if I can write to it, or I can read it from an information link. Most of the time, when use after frees are exploited, though, it's when you're accessing another person's room, or you're accessing a pointer you shouldn't have access to. So imagine I have one data structure that gets free that I have control over, and it's like a string that I can write to. But then it gets swapped in with a data structure that has function pointers. Well, now, if I write to my string, it thinks it's just writing to a string, but in reality, it's writing to function pointers. So I'm able to corrupt a different data structure with that bug. That right there is why use after freeze is so powerful. But I have another visual diagram here. In order to do this, you want to allocate to a pointer 1. You want a free pointer 1. And now when it's allocated, or that pointer 2 is allocated again, when it recycles the memory, you have pointer 1 and pointer 2 look at the same location. And this means you have a difference in ownership, and it causes major problems. So in this diagram, we're showing that this pointer is within the T cache. Sorry, this chunk is within the T cache, but we have a pointer to it still. And we can corrupt the FD or read from it for an information leak in order to cause major problems. So this is what a use after free vulnerability is. To recap, we have a reference to a pointer, even though it's been given back to the allocator. It's been recycled, and now we control the data on it in some capacity, or we're just reading it. And this is the second most common vulnerability reported to ZDI. This is a lot of the vulnerabilities that we're going to be using for this course, so have a good grasp of this. Thanks.